Hello, I present today a new episode of our program Eurointegrators, and our guests today are Ambassador of Portugal in Ukraine, Pani Maria Cristina Serpa de Almeida. Hi. And Anatolii Maksiuta, the head of Institute of Social and Economical Research, former first Deputy Minister of Economic Development, and also ex-Deputy Minister for Ministry of Finance. Yes. Hi. Maria Cristina, you are working in Ukraine from 2014. Which difference you noticed in Ukraine during the last 5 years, and on which stage the relations between Ukraine and Portugal are now?
Well, I do. In fact, in these 4 or 5 years that I've been here, I've seen a huge change here in Ukraine. I would say that I have seen that it has changed from a rather depressed atmosphere, but at the same time they were thinking we will do something new, and now I see this. It has been done. New things are showing up, and it's lively, especially in Kiev, but not only in Kiev. It's in the big cities of Ukraine. You can feel it. Something has changed. It's more pro-European in the sense of livelihood, and it's very good. We have had a lot of visits of ministers to Portugal. First it was Minister Klimkin, who went there in 2016, then Minister Poltorak, and then it culminated with the visit of President Poroshenko at the end in December 2017. And it followed up afterwards, especially in the economic affairs. We had quite a few more visitors to Lisbon, and we have also done the same, the reverse. We had the visit our Minister of Foreign Affairs in 2017, and also the Minister of Defense in 2018. And we are waiting for the scheduled visit of our President here to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So quite a big connection between the two. I dare say that maybe it's because there is such a huge community in Portugal of Ukrainians. They feel very at ease there. Many people working there, many people, they started to be more on the fields, on manual work, but now they do a lot. Many were doctors. Now they are doctors in our hospitals. Many.
Portugal recognized our diploma.
Yes. Yes. In teaching, music teaching, so many Ukrainians are in our conservatories in the whole Portugal, not only in the mainland, but also on the islands. Mm-hmm. And I would say it's one of the most integrated communities that we have. They are completely mixed into the Portuguese population. They live next door. Mm-hmm. It's the third community. We have the Brazilians, we have from Cabo Verde, there are two Portuguese language countries, and then it's the Ukrainians, mm-hmm. which is fantastic.
Fantastic for Portugal. I'm not sure about Ukrainian opinion about it. What do you think, as an ex-worker of both Ministry of Economy and Ministry of Finance, how such big immigration from Ukraine influence for Ukrainian economy? We watch statistics. Yeah, it's around
35,000
in 2014, and double or even more illegal, so more than 100,000, which watch statistics. So what can you say about that?
In my opinion, migration or labor migration is a generally negative thing. And the tendency is that Ukrainians can't find work at home and are forced to look for it in the other countries. first of all in Europe and then in Russia, who has also a significant wave of migration there. Of course, here is a positive aspect, that the money transfers of immigrants to Ukraine reached 11-12 billion according to the assessments of the National Bank. And it definitely affecting positive on the maintenance of the payment balance. Even the IMF doesn't give us as so much money as our immigrants do. But today it has already become a threat to the growth of economics. And today the Ukrainian economy is practically not growing. 2-3% that we have nowadays, that is a very little amount. And simply is the restoration of the level which was before the crisis. And today there is a task that this level should increase by 5-7%. But such growth can't be achieved without workers, and there are no workers in many cities and villages today. We have examples when our entrepreneurs should raise salaries because of this labor migration. It is definitely a good thing, but the other competitive conditions that they have are worse than their European counterparts have. I mean the conditions of landing and conditions for access to state support. There is practically no support from the country here. So that's why they lose in this competition. And here is an example. One of my acquaintances had to sell his small factory in western Ukraine, precisely because his workers went to work abroad. He had to increase salaries to find people, and even with a salary of 18,000-20,000, he couldn't recruit people to constantly work. Therefore, I think this is the result of little attention paid to eco-policy, to the issue of job creation in Ukraine, and to the issue of investment attraction. The deferral rate is too high. We see that inflation last year didn't reach 10% and the discount rate 17.5%. Our financiers and bankers always explain that the interest rate is connected with inflation. There is a big imbalance. We will never stop migration until there will be a policy of creating enterprises in Ukraine. This requires foreign investments. And then we will be able to export goods, not people. And then we will be able to raise salaries, not just by raising the substance minimum and artificially pulling it. We will be able to raise because Ukraine will be able to produce competitive products with high added value. Today we see statistics that the industry doesn't actually grow in Ukraine. Last year, it was less than 1% of it in the first quarter. It is completely negative thing. It seems to me that there is a key to returning our labor migrants to Ukraine. I'm not touching the humanitarian, social dimension of this problem. So, for investors, it is definitely important that the reforms that started in Ukraine eventually showed the result, worked. Because, in my opinion, we risk losing the desire to reform at all because of the lack of results. We're talking about the fact that if reforms are successful, then they should be shown in the form of eco-technological growth. If there is no economy salaries, then the reforms are carried out for the sake of themselves, but not for anything else, not for the sake of people living in Ukraine. People need salaries, they need a prospect of development. Youth needs social lifts. They must understand that in their country they can achieve business success, social success. They can work in public administration. This is not only a group of people who can work there, it has to be open. But in my opinion, the problem is already so serious that it can't be solved soon. We don't see the directions of this solution so far, because there are no direct investments. Investors don't invest in Ukraine.
What do you think about international finance institutions? They helped during crisis to Portugal, and how you can compare this help to Ukraine?
Ukraine has a long history of cooperation with international financial organizations. In fact, since '96, as far as I remember, we had intensive work. They certainly help us to stay afloat, not to drown. They give us money, they give us technical advices, they send experts to us for help. But it seems to me that the problem with Ukraine is that from the Ukrainian side should be more willing to accept this help and use it for the benefits. And this also applies to financial assistance and technical assistance, because we have many projects that are being prepared to be financed by the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development and by the World Bank. But the money is not used because Ukraine cannot offer such projects. Concerning the IMF, they are ready to give us another tranche, but there are problems that haven't been resolved to date. In general, I emphasize again, we don't see economic growth yet. This is also why the IMF is worried about. In the latest memorandum, they pointed out that reforms don't provide economic growth in Ukraine. Ukraine needs not only the emphasis on economy, but also on development. Therefore, it is necessary to soften monetary policy and to see if we are taking money and keeping the budget deficit within the limits of 1 or 2%, it is not enough to develop. And once again, I would sit at the negotiation table with international financial organizations and would make such a seamless economic program that would make it possible now to soften fiscal and monetary policies in order to lay the foundations for future growth and make structural changes in the economy, because today's economy is actually driven by agriculture. Agriculture never produced a lot of added value and never created a lot of jobs. There is a negative tendency in general as modern technologies are coming in agriculture, the number of employed people is decreasing. People in the villages today are unemployed. It could balance the development of the processing industry, the food industry, which is developing quite rapidly today, but also the hard work that has traditionally been for Ukraine, and this is a complex machine building that needs an intellectual contribution, and it still exists in Ukraine. We have also an educational potential that prepares IT people for Western companies. And if to combine all these factors, we have to establish and join the program with international financial organizations, while they will support us not only by money, but it will be a good signal for private investors that Ukraine works with these organizations and we understand each other. And it seems to me that we are using a little of this potential of cooperation with international financial organizations. We're trying to get some money for a short period to pay off our debts, to do something temporarily. But in fact, if we come up to this cooperation rightly, then we should talk less about what kind of harm they bring and make it more useful for us.
How do you see the current situation in European Union? It was a European Union election, parliament election recently, and at the same time there are some Eurosceptics in, I believe, all countries of Europe. Some of them ultra-right, some of them ultra-left. What's going on in Portugal?
Not at all. We are still completely out of these Eurosceptics. None.
You don't have in your national parliament Eurosceptic party?
No. And who won were the traditional parties. The Socialist Party, then it was the Social Democrats, the Christian Democrats, and there is a new touch that came in. It was this more ecological. It's the party of animals and nature. It's more on ecological. It's the new point that came in. Our problem was that we have not done, as the other countries have done, our the number of voters that they didn't went as we expected. It was a very sunny day over there, and everybody went to the beach instead of going to vote. That's a point that needs to be taken care of, and they are thinking of it.
How does Portugal see Ukrainian EU integration wishes and European Atlantical wishes? What is your position about it? Would you vote for that if will be?
It's not that way that it's done. There is a lot of homework to do. We know we are very conscious that Ukraine wants to enter into the Euro-Atlantic area in EU and in NATO. We are aware of that. But as we have done it before, there is a lot of homework to do. In the EU, it's not because you want it that you can enter. There is a lot of things to do. And when people here say, we are doing the reforms for you, it's not true. The reforms are done for the Ukrainians, and they need to do it. They need to do for themselves. What you need to have a modern economy, a transparent economy, a high-tech economy. We have changed. We went that path before entering the European Union. We waited almost 10 years. But we entered, and then afterwards we still worked a lot. And it's that way it should be. You have first to do what's in the association agreement. You have first to do to the DSCFTA, and you have got still a lot to do. But we know exactly that you want to enter into the European Union. It's a fait acquis. But you need also to have all the acquis communautaire before. And regarding NATO, it's the same. We are aware. I have been aware that Ukraine has been in relations with NATO for 25 years. I do remember when the NATO-Ukraine Council was done. It was in '97. But I also know there was a lot of slow motion. There was a lot of ups and downs in this matter. And I do recall very well when in 2008 in Bucharest, in the Bucharest Declaration, it was the doors were open, but you needed to work, INPs, PARPs, and in order to get the map. And then in 2010, you say, no, we stop. We are now non-aligned, and it was stopped. You still kept this connection between Ukraine and NATO, but it was only in 2014 that it started again to pick up, and it was important for you also, for Ukrainians, to pick up that part, because you needed so much to change, to modernize the country, the security sector, the defense sector, and you have been working on this, and this is fantastic. The crisis also is more acute here in Ukraine because of how much you have been spending on the army and on the defense sector. You are on 5–6% of GDP, which is enormous. But you have so much to do that you have not done before. And this is And also, we know in NATO that you want to enter, but there's still work to do.
How does Portugal help Ukraine to stand against Russian aggression? Maybe you have some projects. And also, I know it's happened not only in Ukraine, but also in Portugal, because it was the Бессмертный полк during where Russians actually attack Ukrainians in Lisbon. What's happened there?
Well, I don't know that much because I was here, but I don't think it was that confrontational because over there nothing can be confrontational. We are a very smooth country and everybody does the same over there. But we are completely in favor of the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Ukraine. That's the point. We are in NATO and we are very much on this. We also think that a country has the right to know what it wants for itself and which kind of external policy it wants. And that's the point, that is the big point we see, and that's your decision, not others' decision. And we don't accept the annexation of Crimea because territorial integrity. And we have done quite a few declarations towards this trend, and also on the Azov Sea when the free boats were attacked. And we have been very much vocal also in NATO and EU
for Ukrainian interests.
For Ukrainian sovereignty.
How do you think it's possible to stop Russian aggression, return Crimea and Donbass, or at least stop the fire?
I think that this is a multifaceted and very complex question. We thank to our friends who are supporting us in this. I will probably speak as an economist rather than an expert in the military sphere. It seems to me that it should be a good economic development help to Ukraine, that it would become a good example for Russia, for other countries, as the cooperation with the EU, with the Western countries, affects the economic situation in the country. Because if it isn't working well, then inside and outside, such a strong vision of Ukraine as a successful country is not formed.
We only see Minsk and the Normandy as the only solution that is here in front of us. The military solution, it's out of the question. You cannot. Nobody wants a military solution because it's very costly and it will go nowhere. Mm-hmm. So we have these two ways of trying to deal with it. The way it has been stuck, that's true, but maybe we can go through. It's a possibility that can happen, we don't know, but for our perspective, it's the only way to go. It's the political discussion on this matter.
Thanks, Your Excellency, for joining our program. Thanks, Anatolii, for coming here. Thanks to all who watched us. See you next week.